The greatest prison is not the one made of bars, the one built in your own mind. Most people are trapped by their thoughts, living the same cycles, repeating the same mistakes. But today, I'm going to show you how to break free, because when you change your mind, you will change your life. Do you know where the greatest battles of your life are fought? Not in your house, not in your workplace, not in your bank account, not even in your relationships. The greatest battles of your life are fought in the arena of your mind. Every war, every conflict, every victory, and every defeat you've ever experienced started with a thought. You see, the mind is the headquarters of destiny. It is the control center of your life. Whoever controls your mind controls your future. When people fail in life, they don't fail first with their hands. They don't fail first with their feet. They don't fail first with their circumstances. They fail first with their thoughts. Failure is always conceived in the womb of the mind before it is born in reality. And the same is true for success. Success is never an accident. It is always conceived in the private chambers of your thoughts long before anyone sees it publicly. That is why the most dangerous prison in the world is not the prison with iron bars. It is the prison of a defeated mind. So many people are free physically, but mentally they are incarcerated. They are chained by fear. They are bound by doubt. They are locked in by limiting beliefs. They wake up every morning. They go to work. They carry out their daily tasks, but inside they are still imprisoned by their own thoughts. And until you break free in your mind, you will never break free in your life. Listen carefully. Your mind is the soil and your thoughts are the seeds. Whatever you plant consistently in your mind, whether it is fear, insecurity, doubt, or whether it is faith, vision, and courage, will eventually take root and grow into the tree of your life. If you don't like the fruit you are seeing in your life, you have to check the seeds you've been planting in your thoughts. The harvest of your future is hidden in the seeds of your mind. Think about it. Every invention, every business, every marriage, every failure, every success, it all began as a thought. The chair you're sitting on was once in someone's mind. The phone you're holding was once in someone's imagination. Your habits today, whether destructive or constructive, were once choices in your mind. That is why I say again, the battle of life begins in the mind. If you lose there, you lose everywhere else. But if you win there, no power on earth can stop you. Enemy of your destiny knows this truth. That is why his greatest strategy is not to attack your body first, but to attack your thinking. He whispers lies, he plants doubt, he sows fear. He tells you you can't do it. You're not good enough. You don't have what it takes. You'll never change, you'll never rise. And if you believe that lie, if you accept that thought, you have already surrendered before the battle even began. The tragedy is not that you failed. The tragedy is that you agreed to failure in your mind before life even tested you. That's why you must guard your mind like a fortress. You must treat your thoughts like the most valuable currency you own, because they are. Everything in your life is a reflection of the currency of your thoughts. If you keep thinking small, you will live small. If you keep thinking about fear, you will live in fear. But if you dare to think great thoughts, if you dare to think beyond the limits, if you dare to fill your mind with visions of what is possible, your life will expand to the size of your thoughts. I often say people don't need new opportunities first. They need new thinking. Because opportunities without the right mindset become wasted. A man with a poor mind will always turn wealth into poverty, but a man with a renewed mind will turn poverty into wealth. It is not what you have in your hands that determines your future. It is what you have in your head. That's why the scripture says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. You don't live life as it is, you live life as you think it. Consider this, a lion is not the strongest animal in the jungle. It is not the fastest. It is not the tallest. It is not the heaviest. Yet the lion is called the king of the jungle. Why? Because of its mindset. The lion believes it can conquer anything, and that mindset causes every other animal to respect it. An elephant is bigger, but it runs from the lion because of the lion's attitude. You see, it is not size that makes the difference. It is mindset. The same is true with you. It doesn't matter how small you feel, how limited you think your resources are, how disadvantaged your background may be. If you change your mindset, you change the way you show up in the world. And here's the truth, you cannot rise above the level of your thinking. Your mind is the ceiling of your life. If you want to change your life, you must first change your thoughts. If you want to break cycles, you must break patterns of thinking. If you want to live free, you must think free. Everything else will follow. Everything you see around you right now is not an accident. The life you are living at this very moment is a reflection of the thoughts you've been entertaining for years. Your mind is not just a place where ideas pass through. It is the workshop where the blueprint of your entire life is designed. Whatever you continuously allow to sit in your thoughts, whatever you meditate on, whether consciously or unconsciously, becomes the architecture of your reality. Let me explain it like this. If you look at a building, you don't just see bricks, steel, and concrete. You are actually looking at someone's thoughts that were transferred onto paper, and then from paper into reality. A house is simply a thought made visible. A business is simply a thought given flesh. Even your daily habits, the way you respond to situations, the way you see yourself, those are simply your repeated thoughts that have solidified into behavior. This is why I always say your thoughts are powerful. They are not just passing feelings, they are creative forces. Many of us underestimate how much our thoughts are shaping our lives every single day. If you wake up and tell yourself, I am not good enough, nothing ever works for me, I can't succeed, you are not just describing your life, you are designing it. Because the more you think about it, the more you believe it. And the more you believe it, the more your actions align with it. And the more your actions align with it, the more your reality reflects it. You don't live out of what you wish for, you live out of what you think. That's why some people can be given the same opportunities and still end up with two very different results. One person sees a door, they think, this is my chance, and they walk through it with courage. Another person sees the same door, but their mind says, I'm not qualified, I might fail, I don't deserve it, and so they don't even try. The difference wasn't the opportunity, it was the mindset. Your thoughts also determine how you interpret life. Two people can go through the exact same storm. One will say, this storm is the end of me. The other will say, this storm is preparing me for something greater. Same storm, different thoughts, completely different realities. It is not what happens to you that defines your life. It is how you think about what happens to you. That's why the scripture says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Transformation doesn't start with your circumstances. It starts with your thinking. Think about fear. Fear is not a real event. It is a product of imagination. You can sit in a room where nothing is happening, but your mind begins to think of the worst case scenario, and suddenly your body responds as if the danger is real. That's how powerful your thoughts are. They can trigger emotions, control behavior, and shape your destiny. If fear, which is an illusion, can control your life through your thoughts, imagine what faith can do when you fill your mind with it. Let me make this clear. You cannot think small and live big. You cannot think defeat and live in victory. You cannot think average and live extraordinary. Life will always shrink or expand to the size of your thoughts. The person who constantly sees themselves as limited will keep attracting limitations. The person who dares to think in abundance, who sees possibilities where others see problems, will create a life of opportunities. This is why successful people protect their minds more than they protect their money, because they know money can be lost and gained again. But once your mind is poisoned, once your thoughts are corrupted, your entire future is at risk. That's why you must discipline your mind. You cannot let just anything take residence in your thoughts. You cannot let every negative opinion, every fearful suggestion, every doubtful idea set up camp in your head. Because if you allow them to stay, they will eventually create your reality. Consider the story of the spies who went to view the promised land. 12 men saw the same land. 10 came back with a negative report. We are grasshoppers in our own eyes, and so we are in theirs. Notice, they had already accepted defeat in their minds. They hadn't even fought the giants yet, but they lost in their thoughts. And because they thought like grasshoppers, they lived like grasshoppers. But 2 men, Joshua and Caleb, saw the same giants, the same land, and said, we are well able. They thought victory, so they lived victory. Same situation, different thoughts, 2 very different realities. That is the power of your mind. Your thoughts are like a thermostat. Whatever temperature you set in your mind, your life will adjust to meet it. If you set your mind on lack, your life will cool down to poverty. If you set your mind on abundance, your life will heat up to prosperity. If you set your mind on failure, life will confirm it. If you set your mind on success, the world will eventually bow to it. You must ask yourself daily, What am I thinking about myself? What am I meditating on? Because your life is a mirror of your thoughts. The reason some people never see change is not because change is impossible. It's because their mind is stuck in the same cycle. They want a new life with the same old thoughts. And that will never work. Every change you want to see in your life begins first with a change in your thinking. You can never rise above the thoughts you consistently entertain because your mind is the engine that drives your entire life. If the engine doesn't change, the vehicle cannot move in a new direction. And that is why renewing your mind is the key to transformation. Too many people are praying for new circumstances while holding on to old thought patterns. They want a new life, but they're still carrying the same mindset that created the problems they are living in right now. You cannot solve a problem with the same mind that created it. You cannot expect transformation while keeping the same belief system. For real change to happen, your thoughts must undergo renovation. When you hear the word renew, it means to make new again, to replace the old with the new. Refresh, to rebuild. Imagine your mind as a house. Over time, that house gathers clutter. Old furniture, broken chairs, dusty corners. Now, if you walk into that house every day, you may not even notice the mess because you've gotten used to it. But it's still there holding you back, keeping you from experiencing the beauty of that home. The only way to see real change is to clean out the clutter, throw out the broken furniture, to replace what no longer works with what is fresh and new. That's exactly what renewing your mind looks like. You must remove old, destructive thoughts and replace them with new, life-giving truths. Renewing the mind is not a one-time act. It is a daily discipline. Every day you are bombarded with information, with negativity, with fear, with doubt. The world around you is constantly feeding your mind ideas that are contrary to your destiny. If you don't intentionally renew your mind, those ideas will take root. And once they take root, they will begin to shape your life. That is why you must guard your thoughts and constantly refresh them with truth, with wisdom, with vision. Transformation does not begin with your environment, it begins with your mind. You can take a man out of poverty, but if you don't change the poverty mindset, he will return to poverty. You can give someone a new job, but if they don't change their thinking, they will bring the same old habits into that new position and lose it. You can even put someone in a palace, but if their mind is still in the gutter, they will eventually drag the palace down to their level of thinking. That is why the most powerful change you can ever experience is not external, but internal. When your mind is renewed, everything else begins to align. Your relationships begin to change because you no longer tolerate abuse or disrespect. Your finances begin to change because you think differently about money. Work and discipline, your health begins to change because you think differently about your body, your habits, and your choices. Renewal in the mind produces transformation in life. Think about a caterpillar. It crawls on the ground, limited, slow, vulnerable. But when it enters the cocoon, something happens. It goes through a process of transformation. When it comes out, it is no longer a crawling caterpillar. It has become a butterfly, free to soar in the skies. That process of metamorphosis is a picture of renewing the mind. You may start life crawling, limited, confined by your old thoughts. But when you allow your mind to be renewed, when you go through that process of replacing old patterns with new truths, you emerge transformed. You no longer crawl, you fly. But let me warn you, renewal is uncomfortable because it requires you to confront your own thinking. It requires you to admit, the way I've been thinking is not working, and pride doesn't like that. Pride wants to hold on to old ideas, old beliefs, old excuses. That is why so many people stay stuck. They want change, but they don't want to challenge their own mindset. But if you refuse to renew your mind, you will keep repeating the same cycles. Renewal requires humility. The humility to say, I must think differently if I want to live differently. And let me say this clearly, renewing your mind is not about positive thinking. Positive thinking is temporary, but a renewed mind is permanent. Positive thinking says, a renewed mind says, let me change how I see life forever. One is surface level, the other is foundational. When your mind is truly renewed, it changes your worldview, your decisions, your priorities. You don't just say new words, you become a new person. This is why transformation is not magic, it is discipline. If you feed your mind garbage, you will live in garbage. If you feed your mind the truth, you will live in truth. Every book you read, every voice you listen to, every environment you put yourself in, it is either renewing your mind or polluting it. And if you want transformation, You must become intentional about what you allow to shape your thinking. There is a truth most people don't realize until life pushes them to the edge. Your greatest strength is not revealed when everything is going well. It is revealed when everything falls apart. The darkest moments of your life, the seasons of pain, the nights of tears, the valleys of uncertainty, those are the places where your mindset is tested, and those are the places where your mindset must shine. Anybody can talk about faith when the bills are paid, when the doors are opening, when the body is healthy, when the opportunities are flowing. But the true measure of your mind, the true strength of your thinking, is revealed when the lights go out, when you're pressed on every side, when you feel abandoned, when nothing seems to work. That is when the battle in your mind intensifies. That is when your thoughts will either destroy you or carry you through. You see, the darkest seasons don't come to destroy you, they come to reveal you. Pressure exposes what is really inside. If you squeeze an orange, you don't get apple juice, you get orange juice, because what comes out is what was already inside. In the same way, when life squeezes you through pain, through loss, through hardship, your mindset is revealed. If fear is what dominates you, fear will come out. If faith is what fills you, faith will come out. Darkness doesn't create what is inside you. It only exposes it. That is why I always say the most powerful people in the world are not those who never faced difficulties, but those who learned how to think correctly in the middle of difficulties. Because storms are guaranteed. Challenges are guaranteed. Pain is guaranteed. But the mindset you carry into those seasons will determine whether you collapse or whether you come out stronger. Think of Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, sold as a slave, falsely accused, thrown into prison. Everything around him was dark. He had every reason to give up, to think like a victim, to accept defeat. But his mindset was different. He kept seeing himself as a leader, as someone chosen by God. And that mindset carried him from the pit to the palace. His darkest moments became the training ground for his greatest influence. Or think of Nelson Mandela, 27 years in prison, falsely imprisoned, unjustly accused. 27 years is enough to break a man's body and destroy a man's hope. But what kept him alive, what kept him strong was not his environment, it was his mind. He said to himself, "They can lock my body, they cannot imprison my mind." And when he walked out of that prison, his mindset carried him to leadership, to reconciliation, to transformation of an entire nation. That is the power of thinking differently in the darkest times. Here's the reality: darkness comes to everyone. The question is not whether you will face dark seasons. The question is, how will you think in them? Because darkness has a way of whispering lies. It says, "It's over. You will never recover. You will never rise again." And if you believe that voice, you will sink deeper into despair. But if your mind is renewed, if you have trained yourself to think differently, you will hear another voice in the darkness saying, "This too shall pass. This is not the end. I will rise again." That mindset is what separates those who collapse from those who conquer. The truth is, the darkest moments are opportunities disguised as trials. They force you to grow. They force you to stretch. They force you to confront yourself. They force you to decide, will I think like a victim or will I think like a victor? Will I let this season define me or will I let it refine me? Because every great man, every great woman you admire carries scars from dark seasons, but they chose to interpret those scars as lessons, not limitations. And let me remind you, your mind in the dark is more powerful than your environment in the dark. Two people can face the same tragedy. One gives up and never recovers. The other turns that pain into purpose and rises higher. The difference is not the tragedy. It is the mindset. Darkness will either bury you or birth you, depending on how you think. So when the nights get long, when the tears don't stop, when the door slams in your face, remind yourself, this is not the end of me. This is the shaping of me. This season is not here to destroy me. It is here to reveal me. Because pressure only exposes what was inside all along. And if I fill my mind with faith, with vision, with resilience, then even in the darkest valley, I will think like a king. I will think like a queen. I will think like someone who cannot be stopped. Now listen carefully. The life you live tomorrow is a direct result of the thoughts you choose today. Every limitation, every failure, every disappointment you face is not because the world is against you. It is because your mind has not yet been renewed. But the moment you choose to think differently, the moment you decide to challenge old beliefs and embrace truth, everything changes. Change your mind and you change your perspective. Change your perspective and you change your decisions. Change your decisions and you change your destiny. Transformation does not happen by accident. It happens when you intentionally feed your mind with ideas of growth, courage, and vision. It happens when you refuse to let fear, doubt, or negativity dominate your thoughts. Remember, the darkest moments do not define you, they refine you. Every trial, every setback, every pain is an opportunity to rise stronger, wiser, and more powerful. Power to transform your life has always been in your hands. It is in your mind. It is in the way you choose to see yourself, your future, and your potential. So today, make a decision. Decide to renew your mind. Decide to think like a victor, not a victim. Decide to see possibilities where others see problems. Because when you change your mind, you do not just change your life. You unlock the greatness that has been waiting inside you all along. Choice is yours. Your life will never be the same again because a renewed mind produces unstoppable transformation.